In some ways, this trend has been the sports equivalent of the baby boomer generation blocking out others from the housing market. Just as Gen Y might attend an auction only to have their hopes dashed by a jaw-dropping sales price, top 20, or perhaps even top 10 players, can turn up for the majors only to be left looking on enviously at the trophy presentation. It hasn't always been this way. When Federer put his first stake in the ground, winning the first of his 20 majors at Wimbledon 16 years ago, it came towards the tail end of an era when the top perch on the rankings was shared around by the likes of Gustavo Kuerten, Marat Safin, Lleyton Hewitt, Juan Carlos Ferrero, Andy Roddick and, don't forget, Andre Agassi. Back then the best period of the marvelous Pete Sampras-Agassi rivalry was already in the rear vision mirror, and Sampras, having reached a then record 14 major titles with his 2002 US Open title, decided enough was enough and retired. Aged 31, interestingly, when examining intergenerational questions, Federer himself believes he may have profited handsomely, something of a career kickstart if you wish, from some of the arguably early retirements of the sport's big names. When comparing his longevity in the sport and looking at their careers, Federer says the likes of Sampras, Tim Henman and Carlos Moya didn't play as long as we did, I think. It's a bit of a misconception as well, to some extent, Federer told The Age in an exclusive interview. Pete Sampras retired, thankfully, in some ways for us, early. Because I still believe after he won the US Open he could have still played for another 3-4 years, and won much more, you know, but he felt like he didn't have it in him anymore. That's his choice. That would have taken away maybe slams from me, from others. Agassi, for his part, doesn't buy it and won't endorse an idea that, in some ways, can tarnish Federer's achievements. But he does acknowledge the period of transition. Andre Agassi, credit. Apt four-time Australian Open champion, who won his final Melbourne title in 2003, just before Federer's onslaught on the slams in tennis history, reminds us that the Swiss champion had little problems beating Hewitt, Mark Philippoussis, Moya and Roddick at the time. I remember him beating Pete at Wimbledon, added Agassi, in Melbourne for sponsor Lavazza, with exclamation, I'm not sure the Sampras retirement would have affected Rogers' career. I'm not sure anything could have affected Rogers' career. He's played through multiple generations and it's a pleasure to watch him. What the sport has seen since Federer's breakthrough at Wimbledon, the virtual lockout by the Big Three, they have 51 majors between them just quietly, can be explained by a combination of significant factors, says six-time Australian Open champion Federer. There's this sport's unquenchable thirst to chase and break more records, a phenomenon that didn't exist in other decades, Federer says, but one that has also driven him. Yeah, I also got caught in that web in a good sense. That helped create the lure for players to stay in the game, which, combined with smarter training and preparation as well as a ranking and points system that rewards players at the top, has meant the sport's aging stars simply choose not to go away. Federer, who keeps his close an eye on tennis history as almost anyone, can reflect on a period for the game he individually has probably shaped more than any person, on or off the court. I just think the way the last 20 years have gone, or 15 years especially, 10 years, have been quite interesting. The world number 3 says, we keep ourselves in better shape, you know. We take care of our body, and traveling gets easier than back in the 80s. I think that's just what we will see more in the future, so as well, guys will play for longer. And that means domination could be longer as well. Roger Federer, credit. Eddie Jim, that means records may be broken more frequently because also the media drives the players today to break more records. It was really Pete Sampras who started that, breaking Roy Emerson's record, 12 major titles, and being world number 1 for as long as he was. Now to the skip generation, yes, those poor souls, or the bridesmaids of the sport. Federer is careful with his words, taking a long pause before speaking, when explaining how he, Nadal and Djokovic in particular, found the secret to sustained success, stopping the next tier from unlocking their potential. Federer cites Kei Nishikori, Grigor Dimitrov and Milos Raonic as just some examples. There are others of course, with the 20-time slam winner acknowledging the obvious, it's been tricky for them. Kei Nishikori, credit. AAP, me, Andy, also Rafa, obviously Novak were able to sustain a very high level of play for a long time. And we're still doing it at this age when normally maybe some players would be fading to some extent, Federer says. Then you had other guys making their ways, you know, like Juan Martin, Del Potro and Stan and Marin Cilic, later on in their career. I think that really gave a lot of players more belief that, well, you can break through at 27, 29, 30 maybe. There's the crux, it's only a maybe. It's only Del Potro and Cilic with solitary US Open titles who've made incremental inroads. Federer adds, but the way maybe also our tour is structured with the points and everything, it's hard to break through quickly and early, unless you're Rafa, or Leighton, and you're such a great teenager, but you need something extraordinary special. The perennial and underlying question for this sport is thus, when will the damn wall break? Where is that next 18, 19 or 20-year-old with that something extraordinary special to break the spell? When looking at best prospects of players aged around their early 20s, Federer says the next big break is definitely going to come. In some ways world number 4 Alexander Zverev is already here, without the major title to his name that everyone demands, and Federer is fulsome in his praise. Loading, Zverev, look, we know what he can bring, Federer said. He had an unbelievable finish at the World Tour Finals after, you know, losing to Novak too, then he beat him in the finals. That is tough stuff. It was momentum. He was able to break that momentum and win it. That was tough. That shows that he will win big things in the future. Moya, a major winner himself and the coach of Nadal, concurs about the German's talent, saying he's the player already there, while also noting the potential of rising Australian Alex de Minaur. The 1998 French Open champion cites Canada's Denis Shapovalov, emerging Greek Stefanos Tsitsipas, Russian Karen Khachanov, Argentine-born Georgian Zverev as the next generation of stars. It takes a bit more time to be more consistent week in week out. That's what still these kids are lacking compared to the big three, Moya told The Age. It's a matter of time to see them take over. As for the middle tier, think Dimitrov, Raonic, Nishikori, Cilic, Del Potro and maybe even 25-year-old Austrian Dominic Thiem. Now a French Open finalist, it's their brief to leave a greater imprint on the sports history books, with Jake Nile.